Hey, everybody, welcome back to the High Performance Zone. Today, we're going to talk about poquito más, how to get a little more más into your podcast. And this is with superstar, wrote a book, Kevin McCarney. It's about big brain and little brain. Listen, I learned a ton about communication in this podcast. This podcast is about how to respond versus react, especially under pressure, how to communicate in a customer service way, how to make a difference in your own brain. Are you operating from your higher self, the big brain, the conscious brain, or are you operating from the triggers? And we talk about the difference between being triggered, which he doesn't like, about activation, but how to take control. We have these neutral sayings that bring you back. This is going to give you a lot of control in your communication. I learned a ton, both personally and professionally. One of the funnest interviews, and I think one of the most applicable. So stand by. We're about to dive in with Kevin and Gucci. Poquito más. Glad to be here. Here we go. Hey, Kevin, great to have you on the High Performance Zone. I got an opening question, and that is, how do I get a little más into this podcast?
Well, it's almost two different worlds for me. The book is all about interpersonal communication, which actually derived from our training program at Poquito Más, which is the restaurants that I own for 37 years now. Yeah. And I feel very grateful that I'm still in business. I feel very grateful that my team is still with me completely. Wow. And we've learned a lot about how to handle people under pressure. And so we put it into a little bit of a manual about a decade ago, and it grew into a presentation, and it grew into the book that you have before you.
Wow. Well, let's talk about that book. First off, love the title. Big brain, little brain. It's amazing. I know that grabs you. I hear it's doing really well on Amazon. Don't you have bestseller on 4 different categories?
Yes, we do. And in office management, in customer service, in behavior, and I think the other one was personal management, personal self-care management. And I think the reason I think it's doing well is because it does talk to today's issues in a lot of ways. It's how to handle yourself under pressure.
Yes.
And how to handle that. The big brain, little brain is really about having control over the choices you make in your words. Because sometimes we don't feel like we have control. Sometimes everybody feels, and I nowhere in the book will you see the word triggered. Because triggered, nowhere in there, triggered almost sounds like when I'm talking to people about communicating, I don't want to say, someone say, well, triggered you can't use that as an excuse as to why you said that. You've got to go back. And so we use the word activated. And if there was a spectrum, I'd put activated at the beginning of the trigger spectrum, so that you're at the beginning of this, you haven't said anything wrong, or haven't done anything wrong, but you still feel the need. Personally, you want to say something. You feel like you got a right to say something. And in different situations, you may feel completely justified, but it's that ripple effect that happens afterwards that we have to keep an eye on.
Oh man, I got some rapid fire questions for you. We're going to unpack this fun because actually the word trigger came up with my wife and I just yesterday. And I love the idea activate, but we talk about triggers and how, and I also like to talk about, and I know you do, about to respond versus react. Okay. Especially in communication.
Absolutely.
Let's dive in first off though, to this idea of communication, right? So under pressure, as a Blue Angel, I think I have a little bit to share. How do you?
I think you do.
And I want to unpack that because that's the really the thesis of your book, right? How do you communicate under pressure? So what does that mean to you?
Well, and this is where we go through a bunch of different tools and traps you can use in the book. But one of the main things, I've been giving presentations for about a decade now. And one of the things that came up, and you probably know this concept extremely well, but you might have a different name for it. Because when everything's going wrong, you have got to be present, incredibly present. But what I noticed is a lot of people, when you say big brain, little brain, they get the idea, but some people would come up to me after a presentation and go, oh, yeah, but I can't think that quick. I can't get there that quick. I don't, I'm not as quick as my friend who's always got the sharp thing to say. And
Yeah.
so, and this happened in business groups, and in another group that I was dealing with, I was training a group of people coming out of prison. They were teaching them culinary skills in the program. They brought me in to teach them how to handle the pressure in the kitchen, when things go wrong, because things will go wrong in the kitchen. It's just natural. And a lot of people, and there's a lot of sharp things, so you got to be careful. One of the things I noticed, it doesn't matter if it's a business group or the group learning culinary skills, there was a certain percentage that really needed help trying to get to their big brain. So I came up with this concept of neutral. And that is, instead of thinking that you have to get the big brain right away, get to neutral. And in the neutral chapter, you'll see we talk about different tools within that. Once you get to neutral, it's not count to 10, because count to 10, what are you doing? You've got to do more than count to 10. You've got to know where you're going when you're doing that. You get to neutral, and then there's some tools there to say, okay, and you know this really well, because under pressure, you've got to get to neutral, because it's like an immediate awareness of the moment you're in.
Like the word.
Immediate awareness, and you have got to know exactly what your next move is and the repercussions of that next move, the next things that come out of your mouth, and the repercussions of those. Because what will happen, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I want to bring back to awareness real quick. And then I want to define big brain and little brain, because I don't think our audience knows that yet. But the idea of awareness, in aviation, we called it situational awareness. And what it really boils down to, and I know you know this well too, is what I like to call macro and micro thinking. Can you open up and focus down? Open up and focus down. Turns out that, that's a skill. We all do it naturally, but you can actually train yourself to do that. And I find that in not just flying air shows, I got to open up, not hit the sailboat. Okay. What's the other obstacle? Focus down. Where's my wingman? What's my communication? What's the next call I got to make on the radio? Back, open up. And I find that in life, not only in relationships, but in life, that skill is a tremendous skill. And I love the idea of going to neutral first, or having that awareness present. So I've got 3 questions for you, rapid fire. You pick the one. We need to define what a big brain reaction is and what a little brain reaction would be. And then let's go into the neutral and the tools. Over to you.
Okay. Big brain is going to be in control of that moment. And it is, to what you're talking about, the open and the closing, wide and tight, it's being that awareness of the moment you're in. Okay, you can, at the moment, hey, I'm here today. I'm in this room with all these people, and then say, oh, what do I have to say next?
Yes.
Big brain is in control. Big brain is genuine. It's empathetic to the situation they're in. Big brain is always listening and wanting to be kind and thoughtful. That's kind of the characteristics of big brain. And little brain is... Hold
on. I would like to, on the big brain, that's cool. I like to think of that almost as your higher self.
Yes.
Played around with the big S versus the small s, because, you want to come across as you're the goodness you have, your full potential, your higher self. I love that you talked about listening, empathy, compassion would be another one in there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's the higher self. Okay, good. Let's talk about the little brain now, or add to that.
Well, let me add to that. The big brain, the way I look at it in the book, the way I did is metaphorical context. It's the neocortex. It's the big part of the brain where all our information is stored. And we know we know what to say. We know what to do. The little brain is more primal. It's that reptilian brain that is more impulsive and just wants to feel good in the moment and doesn't have a lot of thinking about whether or not it's going to create any problems. You see people, if you've ever been to a youth sports game, you've seen a lot of little brain in action, right? And it's not the kids, right? So you have people that feel like I have a right to say this, and it's okay, you do, everybody does. But I think that what I'm trying to do is sharpen people's skills to where maybe they don't go as little brain in those comments as they could, because little brain is impulsive, it's insensitive, it's sarcastic, it's snarky, it's careless, it's selfish, it's a poor listener. And I think the snarky is being enabled right now by the internet. The internet is great because it lets us have a conversation thousands of miles away, and yet at the same time it's creating all these different monologues, I should say, because people aren't dialoguing on social media. They're monologuing, and what happens is that little brain will take over anytime there's a pressure of the moment. Little brain wants to jump in and take over and say that snarky comment. And if we can prevent that from happening, then it gives the big brain just an extra little bit of time to grab in and go, this is what I should say in this moment. This is how I should handle this. And it's all because of the different influences in our lives. In that moment we're in, you wake up in the morning, you have an argument with your spouse, or you have an argument at work, and then you go into a restaurant and you yell at the person behind the counter, not because it was anything to do with them, but just sort of it's that pressure relief valve that they don't know how to hold on to. They don't know how to process that. And so they take it out on who's ever in front of them.
Okay, so we got a lot of big concepts here. This is going to be a fun podcast, by the way, because we're going to unpack some of these into real life, right? But the idea of the big brain and little brain, if I heard you right, there's the conscious or the higher power, so your decision making, and then the little brain being more our reptilian, whatever that word is, instincts, right? Reactions, right? And sometimes we can get snarky and stuff, but sometimes that's conscious too. So let me ask you this, because I'm trying to go and understand this. Do you differentiate between in the little brain where it's not only instinct, but it's, let's say, negative and sensitive, where there's a consciousness there, but it sure isn't your higher self. And is that my understanding? And give me an example of at a sports event where you were talking about, you see it all the time. I want the example first.
Well, you'd have to go to a seventh inning of a baseball game, and
that's Little League, right?
No, I'm not talking Little League. I'm talking regular baseball game. Little League, you can have it too. Little League or any youth sports thing, you'll see parents get so excited about what's going on. And we had a situation here where our girls were playing volleyball. And of course, the coach was a really nice guy. And, the whole thing was, his whole premise was, we're going to let every girl play every game. Okay. No matter what it takes, they're going to play it. And yet that sounds really good up until the time that, if we left this person in, we could win.
Right.
And so that's when the parents sometimes from the sidelines would have comments and say, no, don't do that. You've seen people, they really have no governor, control sometimes because of the emotions of their kids. And so the kids are fine. And so this one coach, this is a great lesson. All year long, these girls, they were the shortest ones in the league, everything, and they lost every game. Absolutely every single game. And in the next season, they went into a more difficult arena, and they lost every single game. But they were doing better. And the little ones, they could barely get the ball to the net at the beginning of the first season, were doing better. And then it's the final game against the league champs, right? This is their final game. And these kids took the league champs and won the first game, because three things, right? They won the first game. And everybody's looking around like, wow, I can't believe that. The next game, they won by just 2 points, right? So it was even tighter. So now you have these team of girls that, again, everybody played. And at the end of this final game, these girls beat the league champs, right? They walked out of that little auditorium that they played in with the biggest smiles and the best trophy that you could ever have. And that was this simple act of self-esteem and gratitude for this coach who let each one of them develop for that moment. And it's about the moment. That was the moment, because you know what? Nobody remembers who won in you're 10 years old. Nobody remembers that, but they remember that they were able to, even the little ones were able to play all the way through, and they won. And it was a good lesson because it was about developing teamwork and developing teams. And it was about letting everybody make mistakes and then do what you can, because you can't make kids that were short or taller. You can't do that, but you can, for their benefit, you can give them the opportunity to play.
I love that story. I love too the lessons, the deeper lessons learned. Right.
Yeah.
It's funny too. You brought me back to some of my childhood sports. They were always fun. Right. I don't remember the game necessarily, except a couple of them. But I definitely remember in college. Well, I can tell you every game we won or lost. You seem to remember the losses more, especially I played Ohio State my last game in the Liberty Bowl. I was playing for Navy, and they were heavily favored. And it's the classic. I was just talking to another Navy football player. We were on a podcast just earlier. He's asked me a NASCAR driver now, Jesse. In fact, you might want to check it out on the podcast. It's coming out this week. But anyhow, what he said was the same thing. He goes, "Yeah, I remember playing Ohio State, and we almost won." And I called him on it. I said, there's no such thing as almost winning in sports. I mean, to you, that's important. To me, and I told him the story about my thing. We lost 28-31, but we should have had them. But the bottom line is no one remembers that. Okay. Except us who are idiots on that. Right. It's like you either win or you don't. And if you do, what's the lessons we learned and all that. Yeah. But let me go back to something even more important, because I was a Little League baseball umpire. That was that was my first job. I'm in high school.
Are your ears still burning?
I loved it, but you're right. Talk about the heat, and you can feel it because your back's to the stands, right? Yeah. And you can feel the parents and the coaches. And I will say though that I actually didn't mind it because I didn't let that bother me. I just did my best job. I called the balls and strikes the best I could. Right. But I think what you're talking about is a little different. It's those comments that are hurtful, right? And sarcasm I hate. I remember somebody telling me, there's no place for sarcasm, right? If you want to say something to help somebody, fine, but don't shame them or put them down, right? And I was never that quick anyhow. My brain doesn't work that way. I don't think that way. But let's get back to enough of my stories. Let's get back to respond versus react, because I think that's the issue here, right? Yes. If the little brain kicks in, it's emotional. You want to blurt something out. How do you teach people to respond versus react?
What I ask them to do is something to tap into what they already have inside them, but they don't necessarily see it. In neutral, we have a whole lesson on grabbing a neutral word or a neutral phrase that intuitively, and when this is over and people listening, they'll go, oh yeah, I see that. But thinking of it as a tool. For me, a heavy day in the restaurant, a 20-hour day. I had to start at 1 o'clock in the morning. I get home, I want to just get home and I'm just going to relax. I'm going to sit down, have a water, and just unplug.
Right.
I walk into my house and there's 20 kids singing at the top of their lungs. Right. And so it's like you walk in and it's like, okay, what do we have here?
Hey, wait a minute. This is 1 a.m. too, right? I mean,
no, I started my day at 1 a.m.
So okay,
this is about 8 or 9 o'clock.
I got
that night, and it's like. Okay. And it's like, it was okay because, you may feel like because of what in my life, what I influenced that day, what I had experienced that day, I feel like I've got a right to just sit down and relax, but with no knowledge of that the kids were going to be there. And all of a sudden I'm in this situation, and this is a good metaphor for this because we don't know what people are going through, but in that moment, when that pressure of the moment hits, that's when we have to grab neutral and go to what I call our neutral word. And you can't find your neutral word, okay, oh, interesting, or let me think about that, or some sort of a phrase that, let me process this. Something that gives you a little bit of time not to let little brain take over. Because what you're doing when you go to neutral is you're giving big brain a chance, but more importantly, you're stopping little brain from saying that snarky comment that it's going to be really funny in the moment, but then there'll be repercussions with HR the next day, right? So,
hey, give me more of these neutral. I really like this concept. So, what are some neutral words or sayings that you find are helpful?
Mine is okay, right? I have a little wristband and it says okay. I see.
I see.
That's one way to look at it. Oh, and it's like, oh, what's going on here? It's like, it's the idea. And here's the key point. Tone.
Oh, nice.
See, if I say okay, it's a very different message than if I say okay. The tone is the message in so many different times. And when we're kids, when we're infants, we don't know what our parents are saying, but we know their tone means something, right? So if we're about to hurt ourselves, their tone's going to change. And so we never lose that ability to differentiate between the words and the tone. So we know what the tone means. Tone is everything because, and my daughter taught me this. I was underneath the Christmas tree, putting up all the lights, connecting everything underneath. And my daughter, she's 5 years old. She starts to walk up the ladder. And, because I put the ladder, put everything up. And I, okay, then get down from there, right? Nice, simple, calm, little parental voice. Yeah, okay, get down. But, and then she goes up the next step. It's just not like her. No, she can't do that, right? So parental voice number 2, Caitlin, get down from there, right? That's going to make a difference, right? And then she keeps going up and go, Caitlin Rose, right? Got to get the mid lane. And so you hear the escalation in my tone. I get out from under the tree and I'm about to launch, like, what are you doing, right? And I see she's got an angel in her hand.
Oh, wow.
And she wants to put it on top of the tree.
Wow.
And I looked at her, I go, Caitlin, it's really dangerous. You got to get down from there. And this is my 5-year-old taught me this. I like that tone better, Daddy.
Wow.
That's powerful. That tone. Wow, that's powerful. That's one of the first lessons that I had. I mean, I've always been studying this stuff, but she's 30 now, but she really hit on exactly what needed to be said in that moment. It was the tone. Wow. It was the tone. And so I ended up following her up the ladder so she could put the angels up.
I was going to ask you if you did that.
Oh yeah, I'll send you a picture.
Oh please, because I want to see her putting the angel on the tree.
I'll send you the picture. My wife took a picture because she just remembered that moment. Wow. And the thing is that when you look talking to employees, when you're talking to customers, tone is everything. We had a lady come into our one of our restaurants with a friend of hers. This is really a big brain, little brain story. The manager had just received a whole training component on big brain, little brain. The 2 ladies come in, they go sit down, one of them had enchiladas. About 5-6 minutes later, the one with the enchiladas comes back up and slams them on the counter. Ooh. And as loud as she can be, these enchiladas are cold. There was a person in the restaurant that did not hear those words.
Right.
So the manager says, I'm really sorry. I will take care, I'll get you some new enchiladas, I'll bring him out right away. And he does. Brings him out their enchiladas. 10 minutes later, she comes back up, slams them on the counter again, screaming, pointing, you made these enchiladas cold again. The manager looks at her and goes, I am so sorry. Tell you what, let me get you something else on the menu. Anything you want, and it's on me. Because obviously the enchiladas aren't going to today. Well, fine, give me some of those taquito thingies. Okay. He does. Takes her some taquitos. Notices about 15 minutes later, while he's got a line to the door, he can barely manage everything. He sees that she's only taken one bite of the taquitos and he's getting worried. All of a sudden he feels a hand on his arm. And it's the lady. And she says, thank you. Not words that anybody was expecting in this moment. She says, thank you. Thank you for not getting angry at me. She goes, I just came from the hospital. My husband's not doing well. I haven't slept in days. I haven't eaten. I didn't mean to take it out on you. And it's kind of a metaphor for a lot of things that go on in life. We don't know what other people are going through. But rather than meet her escalated angry tone, he brought his tone down. And that gave her a chance to sort of get a sense of, oh, this is me and it's not them. But you're sending a signal when you send a tone. And I think that's de-escalation techniques that I'm sure are taught everywhere, but it's the tone really that has so much to do with it.
Have you seen those studies? I remember one a while back. It puts percentages, and I know that it's hard to do this, right? But the idea of words, tone, and then nonverbal communication. And have you seen that study? I remember it was 7% of communication is your words. Do I have this right? Tone was about 30? What do you remember? 24?
It's variable depending upon who's writing the article.
Okay.
But you're right. And I think what happens is they're probably all right but it depends upon the situation.
I like that.
Let's face it, if you're texting, there is a lot of facial expressions and gestures that can happen. So it's only going to be what you're writing, which I recommend never communicating by email, because I think it's great for information, but email is different because it doesn't carry a tone. The tone is the person who's reading it is going to decide what tone it is. And no matter how good of a writer you are. So what it comes down to is, like, if you're right in front of somebody, if you're having a discussion, yes, somebody's filling their arms, and that's a lot of the communication, if that's how they communicate. But the tone is an instigator. It's something that really sends a message. This is the influences that I'm under right now, right? This is who I am right now. And if you can read the tone that somebody is in, you'll have a really good chance of being successful with that conversation.
Wow. I love what you just said. And you were actually pretty strong about it. You said, never use email for communication. But then I don't know if you said communication, but then you said it's okay for information.
Yes.
Right? That's
exactly what I said.
That's brilliant, because I struggle with that all the time. I actually do not like email for many reasons. And now you've made it really clear, is that it is very hard to get the real message across. It could be taken many different ways. I do like, if there's a lot of information that needs to be sent, yeah, of course, send me information only. That's why, and then texting, gets my attention. It's quicker. But I really like this kind of communication where we're verbally, it's two-way too, right? And you can feel me, I can feel you. Even if it's a voicemail, I find it's better than sending an email, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. And I think the thing that I find is that emails, people can go into a posturing mode, right? And they start posturing a lot, and they get more verbose, and they try to present their argument almost in an email, where if you just had a conversation, you could work it out in 2 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. So how have you found your research, or, all the instructions you've given? How do you train people then in today's world on communication, where for, the older group like you and I, email was the way we grew up, right? And I think now for most of the newer generation, I don't think they communicate as much there. So what have you learned in the communication styles, and what do you actually recommend for people?
Well, I highly recommend, if they can't meet person to person, then at least face to face on Zoom or another platform, or a phone conversation, because there's all of those three ways I'm talking about have a level of civility to them, where as soon as you get into texting and that impulsive time warp that people think I have to respond right now. I just got a text, I have to say something back. Somebody just said a snarky comment to me. Well, I can't let that go. I can't let that be out there in the ether. I can't let that go. I have to say something back. And this is where a lot of the social media sites sort of, create this impulsive nature of communication. I have to say something back, and I have to explain to everybody, right? So I really think that it comes down to us recognizing that a lot of times I'll just say, let me call you a little later.
Nice.
Instead of trying to answer their comment or in a text, I'll call you a little later. What's a good time for me to connect with you? Because the impulsiveness of and again, it's not their fault. The whole world has gone to this impulsive nature of communication where they think they have to answer it right away. But I really think that creates a time pressure thing, that they don't have to do that. And in the book, we have something we call time parachutes. So you'll appreciate this. Is a time parachute. It's like, okay, when you are under pressure and you don't know exactly what to say, and somebody wants an answer, like right now, especially in a text, you have to send back a time parachute. You have to go, you know what? I just don't have time right now. I want to talk to you about this. Let's talk later. But the idea is to give yourself time for that response. Don't feel that you have to immediately come up with an answer for the question that's being asked. And again, the impulsive nature of the internet has made this almost seem like it's who we are, but it's not. We can slow it down. We can take control. Big brain, little brain is about taking control. Is you taking control of the moment, you taking control of your communication, and you saying, you know what, I will respond to this, but not just yet.
Yeah. Boy, I love it. I like the idea of that parachute. For me, I always try to build in at least 24 hours, especially if it's something that, I'm not sure how I want to answer, or it's negative in some sense. I really like that idea though, of sending them something and letting them know, let's talk, or let's figure this out later. Interesting. My wife was just going through, she was selling one of her properties, and they're in these addendum of going back and forth on contingencies and all this. And we just did exactly what you said. And that is yesterday, we were feeling pressure, and I said, hon, let's just take a break, step back and say, we'll get back to you in 24 hours, even though the thing had to be signed by last night. But it really helped. It really helped the situation, and we got clarity, and it all worked out. So that's cool. Hey, let's go back real quick to the neutrals, because I have one to share. So you're neutral of okay. I remember hearing somebody, his name was Lou Tice, a great speaker out there in the world. And it was more about a personal one. So let's say you said something that you didn't, right after you said it, you go, I can't believe I said that. Right. Or, it's the self-talk. Right. And what he would say, and I find this to be very helpful, that's why I want to share it with you and everybody, is a saying that simply you can tell yourself the next time. Instead of beating yourself up, like, I can't believe I said that right there. That's not the way to respond. It's you just take a pause, like you said, and go the next time. And I find that very helpful. Well, what are some other ones that you find helpful?
Well, I first of all, I really like that story, because I think it's important to forgive yourself if you make an oops comment, right? Because we all have. There's something I call out in the book about there's no expiration date on an apology, so you can say, hey, you know what? Last time we were talking, I said this. I don't think I should have said it that way. Boom, you just immediately erase it. And the idea is that if you do have some baggage because of some comments you made, you can look for opportunity conversations where you can get rid of some of that baggage by just identifying something there. But it's exactly that. It's, we are going to make mistakes. I know half this book really well. Okay. I'm working on the other half. Right. So I grew up with 4 older brothers, 2 younger sisters, and man, winning the argument was the rite of passage. Right.
Oh.
So we none of us, we just, nobody wants to be in a room with all of us, because we're all going to be winning the argument. Right. And what you learn about winning the argument is you don't really win. Right. So I'm thinking about all this stuff, and so many different times, it's about winning the moment that you're in, even if that means not winning the argument. And I think that what I look at when it comes to neutral, these words and all these different things, to me, it's, to your point, that macro and micro. You realize, okay, I'm in this situation, and you come back to the micro. It's like, this is what I need to do now. I didn't say that right. If I can say something now, I can correct it. Otherwise, it could be a phone call next week or the next time you talk to the person. It really does come down to forgiving yourself and forgiving others too if they make a oops comment, and not taking everything somebody says personal.
Yeah. Hey, tell me more about your upbringing, because I read you moved a lot.
Yeah.
By age 8, right? 11 different moves or something. I was in a military family. I moved, I think, I don't know, like 9 times by the time I was 16. But and you mentioned your brothers and sisters. Your upbringing, some of your old jobs. I mean, amazing. Give me some background on you. Where did all this wisdom come from?
Well, I was number 5 of the 5 boys, and then there were 2 girls. So the wisdom came from being number 5, and everybody telling you to shut up and listen. Okay. And it came from that position of observation, where I got to observe a lot of things. I got to watch my brothers make mistakes, and I got to watch my sisters. And so I just kind of took it as and they didn't all make mistakes. Some of them did great stuff. Like, you follow the good stuff and you recognize and acknowledge stuff that doesn't work. So that became that. But I got into the customer service business early. I was a doorman at Grauman's Chinese Theater.
Were you really? I read that and that blew me away. What kind of movies? What happens at Grauman's Chinese Theater?
Well, back in early 70s, it was normal Hollywood, if you want to call it that. There were still street people, but not to the level you see today. There were characters, and they would always come up. And I was the doorman, so I prevent people from coming in or take the tickets. But more importantly, you're talking to all these people from all over the world on the forecourt. That's where all the footprints are. So they would always come up and ask you questions about different things. And there were different things going on in the neighborhood, but it was Hollywood in the 60s and 70s. And so, you just had to be sharp. You had to keep pretty sharp. Otherwise, the street people were always working games. But I got really good at observing things and observing people. And then I think, it was from there.
Real quick, Kevin, I grew up in LA and went to high school, Palos Verdes, in 73 through 77. Okay. So I remember walking those streets,
you could have passed by.
Really? You were a doorman in that time?
I was a doorman at 73, 74, 75.
How cool is that? And the other thing, then I went to Colorado for a year, played football, and my summer job was being a bouncer at the LA Forum for the concerts. Wow. Now, and I'm the smallest dude there, right? I mean, I'm a little defensive back. They hired all these big linebackers and linemen. And I remember the first day we're all meeting and the guy looked at me and he's kind of thinking to himself, what are you doing here? Right. And he fortunately he gave me the biggest, strongest guy to be my partner as we would, but doing the same thing as you did. I was checking tickets, and making sure people didn't get down to the floor or backstage unless they were supposed to. And I'll never forget, there's these two big guys and I'm all by myself. It's dark. The concert's already going. If we had a problem, we would flash our flashlight, but right now I'm on my own, and these two big guys come down and they're like, and I say, hey, let me see your tickets. And the guy says, you don't need my ticket. I said, no, actually I do, let me see your ticket. And he finally gets a ticket. I said, hey, sorry, you're up there. And he goes, oh yeah, well, I want to go on the floor, and who's going to stop me? And I was like, well, you're kind of looking at him. And he goes, I'll never forget this line. He says, I don't see enough of you there. And I looked at him and I said, say that again. And he said, I said, what's that?
Can't get more little brain than that.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see a W there. And then I just held my guy. I said, okay, try me, but then I realized I didn't want the problem, right? And so I gave him an out. I didn't say, just try me. And this is no way, I said, if I were you, I'd find a different aisle. Because maybe you're going to find someone that's not going to actually do what I just did to you. And you know what? I gave him the out because he acted really tough, but he backed off, right? Yeah. And anyhow, little brain, big brain. I don't know which one. I was probably operated off the little brain too at the time.
Well, you being in that situation, bullies are cowards, and to begin with. And so you stood up to him, and that's when cowards, walk away, because they are cowards, and you have to read the situation, and you have to know what's best for this moment, for here, that's going to not interrupt the concert, that's not going to interrupt everything. You've got to make that strategic move, and so many different algorithms, if you want to call them that, just to make this concert go well. And because that was the main idea. So it's tough. I mean, I've been in customer service all my life, and I am very grateful that I have employees that have taken the training. I had my first employee who I hired 37 years ago.
Wow. And this is for your restaurant business, right?
Yes. And
it's called Poquito Más?
Poquito Más, a little more.
A little more. And where are your restaurants?
Studio City, North Hollywood, mostly Los Angeles area.
Okay.
And listen, we make everything from scratch. We love what we do. And but the communication part, we learned and became part of our culture, that we have to handle people. Yes. I'm in the business, essentially, if you're in the quick service restaurant business, you're in the business of serving people with low blood sugar.
Oh, interesting.
They're coming in, their influence is hunger.
Wow.
And that's their main influence. And so, aside from everything else that be going on, but it's hunger. So if you screw up that order, if you make a mistake, you're not making a mistake on just that item. They've been thinking about it for 2 hours.
Wow.
Now they come in, they order it a specific way, and if they don't get it that way, it is primal. This is where that little brain comes in. You know, wait a minute, this is food. I've been thinking about this. And so it really does come down to helping people, by the way, that get into little brain mode, customers that come in sometimes in little brain mode, how to turn them around.
That's so cool. Let's keep going, because I interrupted you on that. I'd like to know how to turn them around. You talked about this pivot, right? This ability, you got a neutral point, can I go to neutral? So you were the fifth brother. You're in this power of observation. Keep me going, man, because you've learned something. Yeah.
I learned a lot. But one of the biggest lessons I learned was at Universal Studio, because from Grauman's Chinese Theater to Universal Studios, different people work at different places. I got a job as a tour guide there. And I'm extremely dyslexic and extremely shy, right? But my life didn't let me be shy. The world kept saying, no, you're not shy. You're gonna have to be here with all these people. But I want to go where I could make some money. I am a tour guide at Universal Studios, and it was a hot day. It must have been 110, rare 110. We're talking years ago. And it's all asphalt. So the trams, they were just going to get some new ones, but they hadn't arrived yet. So the older ones were breaking down. 3-hour waits for these tours to get on a tram. 3-hour waits. I'm in an air conditioned break room, and I hear Kevin, tram on the right. It's a group from Europe. They're really angry. Good luck.
Good luck.
So I walk out like I've been fed to the lions, and I did everything I could. I'm smiling. I'm looking at every car. I'm going by them. Think, I can win them over, right? And nothing. They are arms crossed in there. And no, I get all the way to the front. The leader of the group grabs my arm and says, hey, take us back to our bus. You cannot treat us like this. This is too much. No. And I looked at my, sir, that is above my pay grade, but I'm going to ask you to sit down because we're going to get moving. I was motioning to the driver, and he heard me right away and got us a little bit going forward. And the leader of the group says, fine, but we will not enjoy it. You cannot make us laugh. Okay. Okay. So I started thinking, I'm a snarky 19-year-old kid, right? This is little brain snarky. I'm just not going to give them a good tour. I'm just going to give them the worst tour ever. That's what the snarky 19-year-old kid wants to do, right? I'm going to get them for dissing me, right? Well, about a minute or two in, when we started moving along, I finally look up and I see that in the front row of the second car, there's a family from the Midwest that had gotten stuck with this other group. They had been in the same sun, beat red, but they all have smiles on their faces.
Wow.
And I'm looking at them and going, they were just excited that it was going.
They were just glad to be there, by the way. Glad to be here.
Bango. Thank you. That's, your t-shirt and your expression there is just the absolute perfect expression. Everybody should wake up with that every day. I'm up, I'm alive, I'm glad to be here. So thank you for bringing me back to that.
Well, we're going to keep making this a movement, because it's all about that, but go for it.
I like it. But so as the tram started moving a little bit, I started realizing, I'm just going to give this family the tour. I'm going to ignore every negative expression around them, the 124 other negative expressions. And I'm going to give these people the best tour I can and ignoring all the negativity. Well, in about 10 or 15 minutes, all the people around them started coming along on the tour. Because these people were having a good time. And then by the end, everybody, except for the leader, was having a good time. We pull up and there's a round of applause. I did not expect that. And so I get off the tram to greet everybody. And this group was so thankful and said, don't worry about him. He's always grumpy. But they were so thankful. They were just they'd had a good time. And it had nothing to do with the temperature of the trams. They were having a good time because the people from the Midwest, who, by the way, had waited for all the people from Europe. And as I'm waiting, they're waiting for me. I'm looking, and one of my bosses is getting off the back row of the last car. I hadn't seen him.
Oh, so interesting.
I was being audited.
Whoa.
So imagine if the snarky 19-year-old would have won.
Right.
That ripple effect that I talk about, that would have been an unemployment line. So the family from the Midwest that came up and they said, well, thank you very much. And I said, no. I said, thank you. They said, well, Father says, you really turned that group around. I go, well, you did. You turned them around. You gave me the smiles, and that gave me the reason to want to do this, because I was going to give a completely different tour, not a good one, and nobody would have liked it. And I can feel the mother's hand on my shoulder to this day. She said, well, we just want to thank you for giving us that tour. Thank you for choosing to give us that tour. Oh. Because this is the only time we're ever going to be in California. Wow. And it just made our vacation. So wow. Exactly. It hit me so hard when she said, choose. Yeah. I'm a snarky 19-year-old guy with four older brothers. I know how to win an argument, but what I was learning was how to look at every moment and the repercussions of what I said and who was it affecting. Not only would have been my career, but these people, the only time they could afford to come to California, and I could have ruined that for them. And that's so that snarky 19-year-old's in all of us, right? Yes. He wants that they want to get out. They want to lash back because why? Because they yelled at me, so I have a right to yell back at them. And right. I think what I've learned is that there's what you have a right to say, and there's the right thing to say.
Oh, nice.
Moment. And so if you can think of the right thing to say for that moment, I think that's what Big Brain, Little Brain is all about. It's about giving you control over your words and your emotions in that moment so that you can have a smooth future rather than something that comes back and bites you.
Wow. Brilliant story. Thank you. I can feel that. Can you summarize the steps for me? I'm thinking about if I'm listening and I've got, challenges coming in my life. What's kind of the steps that someone should go through to stay in the big brain and not let that little brain take over?
Well, if I'll just mention the book. I have a checklist for in the morning. Take a good checklist of what's influencing you right now. Is there money issues? Is there family issues? Is there relationship issues? Is there somebody you got to talk to today that you don't necessarily want to talk to? Is there a meeting going on? Whatever it is, that's going to have an influence on you. And then so take a look at the influences in your life first and just kind of put them in the category. At least know. You don't have to be able to correct them all, but just know. And then time is a big pressure when you're traveling. Is a big pressure. But then once you've taken a look at that, then just remember that no matter what situation you're in, there's a ripple effect to what you say. And you want to start off with every conversation with the idea that you need to know what that ripple effect is going to be. You want it to be a smooth, big brain ripple effect, not a jagged little brain ripple effect. And under any situation, if you can't exactly if you're in it and you don't know exactly what to say, just take a moment to go to neutral and just go, hold on a moment. And ponder, but give yourself that breath of time. And I've given a presentation on this and on neutral, and somebody came up to me after this in the business group. The guy says, you need this quote from this guy. I said, what? It's from a guy named Viktor Frankl.
Oh, nice.
Viktor Frankl, because I had never heard of Viktor Frankl.
Really? Oh,
I never heard of him. But the quote was, between stimulus and response, there's a space. Yeah. And that space is our choice. And that's where we get our freedom.
Yes.
And I may have missed a word or two there, but that.
Well, let's say it again. There's so powerful. Between stimulus and response, there's a space. I like to say a gap, but space is even better.
Yes.
There's a space. And it's in that space where we get a choice.
Yes.
And that's where freedom, I don't remember him saying that.
Yeah.
How's it go again? Tell me.
It's funny because I say it so many times, and then I find it, one of those things where it's I want to honor him by saying the exact words.
Yeah, please. I'm glad you're looking it up.
Between stimulus and response, there's a space, and that space is our power to choose our response. And our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Oh, I like that. The power to choose our response, and in that response, is our power and freedom.
Our growth and our freedom.
Our growth and our freedom. That's awesome. I'm going to start using that too.
I never heard of him. I got his book. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, which I highly recommend.
Yes,
he survived 4 different concentration camps.
It's crazy.
And just a really brilliant man, understanding the human condition, which is what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're all human. We all have big brains. We all have a little brain. We all have a choice in how we respond rather than react. And I think that's one of the things that I would say is that in every situation you're in, you have a choice, and you have to remember that it's your choice. You don't want anybody else to take that away from you by you overreacting to something they said. You know, if somebody else is trying to instigate you into an argument, you know, maybe it's a football team or anything else. You know, there's a great in martial arts. There's an expression that I learned called slipping the punch, right? And that is when somebody's coming at you full force, you don't stand in front of them. You stand to the side, let them go. Let them hit the wall. Now you're in a better position to respond, right? Yes. So it's the same thing. If people are trying to get you under your skin and get you upset, don't let it happen. Just let it go. So not every comment needs a reaction or a response.
Yeah. Sun Tzu is a great book that talks about that too, with martial arts, you know, about the art of war.
Yes.
Letting the enemy flow like a river, you know, around the rock. I love that.
It's a perfect metaphor for some conversations. You just let it flow.
Nice. Now let's take that one step further. Then I want to unpack a couple of other quotes.
Sure.
It's easy to say let it flow, but it's hard when you're emotionally charged. You're like so you used the word trigger earlier that you don't like because you don't.
Correct.
So tell me why you don't like that word, and what is it important when you say flow? What does that really mean when it's, let's say, not a comfortable situation or the pressure, like you said, you're under pressure. Tell me more.
Little brain is very uncomfortable with silence. Little brain wants to fill in. Okay. When you find other people are coming at you with little brain mode or talking, they're yelling at you or something like that, the best thing you can do is understand that you're in control as long as you don't react to them.
Nice.
And I don't want to give up my power of control to somebody who's trying to instigate me. So to me, it's a control thing. I don't want to give up control to them. And so I'm going to let some moments of silence happen. I'm going to go to neutral. I'm going to find this stuff. And I think that I use the word activate because there's so many little things that can activate us. Think about it. And most of the activations that we talk about on a regular basis for communication purposes are annoyances. Somebody says something about a political thing that we don't agree with, and it's annoying, so we jump in. Or somebody cuts us off in traffic, right? You see this all. You see road rage all the time, right? Somebody cuts somebody off, and they go after them. It's like they speed up to flip them off, and it's like there isn't anything more little brain than that. Same thing with conversation, though. It's like conversation rage. So it's like somebody's cutting you off. Take it for the fact that they're making a mistake. You don't have to follow them into making a mistake. They're a horrible driver. Yes. Oh my gosh. I want to be in the same freeway as them. But you know what? Doesn't mean you have to speed up and give them a gesture or something, because that always ends poorly. It always ends bad. And I think that whether it's road rage or, you see people overreacting in a restaurant today, not just, but food service, customer service. You people overreacting because it took too long to get something at a time when everybody is strained. You see people, there's little things that honestly, that will activate us. I don't like the word trigger because it almost sounds like you've got an excuse to react like that.
Right.
And I'm not giving people the excuse. I'm saying you're activated. Okay. You still have control. You still have control. And again, it really comes down to understanding that you still have the choice to make, and you have control and you have responsibility over the words that come out of your mouth and the actions that you make. Even if somebody is completely annoying and calling you names and gossiping about you, it's your ability to sort of absorb a little bit of that and then find out the right time to distill a response. but not necessarily in that moment. You don't have to react or come up with a reaction. And so it really does come to be, listen, I get activated when I'm at a restaurant and I'm out there. I've got, my coffee is perfectly mixed, right? Perfectly mixed. I'm sitting there, and before I can get to my first sip of coffee, somebody comes by and tops it off. And mix it, and it's like mixing up my cream to sugar. Oh no, right? So it's like, and it's like these little things that will activate people.
Yeah,
you see that. One of the things that I get activated too is when I see rude customers or poor customer service. Yeah. Either one of these things, it's like, okay, how do I fix that? And so I'm always challenging myself to see if I can fix different situations. But more importantly, it's just recognizing myself. Don't go there. It's not worth it. So it's annoying. Let it go. It's all these annoyances that people, if you look on the internet, so many people use the internet to get back at people.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody says something, well, I'm going to say something back. Right. And it's this get back mentality that is being sort of fostered by the internet, because that's what keeps people on the internet.
Yeah.
Is if you can get people to be angry enough to get back at somebody. And so the idea is, don't fall into their traps. And my whole book has tools and traps, right? 21 different tools and 14 different traps that Little Brain will set for you, right? Little Brain will set these traps day in and day out. And your point earlier, I think every day is going to be a little bit different. Every situation is going to be different. There is no perfect cycle of how to handle things. There's only that awareness that you talk about, the macro and the micro, to making you aware of the moment you're in. And what's the best response for this moment?
Man, I can't wait to dive in. I know I just got it in the mail yesterday. I can't wait to dive in to this book, because I can use this right now. I can use it personally. I can use it in with my employees, with my clients, with every interaction, right? Every interaction is it big brain or little brain. Love that. Hey, I got a couple fun questions. Then I want to do a quick debrief
Sure.
on today, because there was so much we learned. But hey, if you're in the restaurant business and the poquito más, if you were to make a taco, a Gucci Kevin taco, what would it look like? What would it be?
I have a couple of favorite tacos. All right. One of them is, and lots of times we call these the back of the house specials, which means we don't tell people about them.
Oh, nice.
Right. It wasn't even kind of the private menu thing, but we had to put one of them on the menu recently. It is a wild caught Pacific shrimp, lightly battered with a little bit of flour, pan fried with some olive oil and the hottest salsa we have. Ooh. And here's what happened. Our hottest salsa is a 10. But when you pan fry it, you're concentrating the flavors and you're reducing the capsaicins, so you're lowering the 10 to about a 6, but with a punch, with a flavor punch. So that we call it the taco San Lucas, and that's definitely and now people want it in burritos too. So it's okay, but it comes down to listening to your customers. There's where you get so much information. I've been in this business a long time. I've been collecting recipes since I was 17, just because I like food. And I fell in love with Mexican food when I was 17. I was taking somebody home from the Grauman's Chinese Theater into East LA, and she said, "Oh, let me buy you a taco." 2:00 in the morning at a taco stand in East LA, I had my first carnitas taco, right? At 2:00 in the morning, and I looked and I go, "What is this?" Because I had never, up until that point, I don't think I'd ever really had Mexican food. I only had the 1950s stuff that was all covered in a whole plate. It was incredible. I fell in love with Mexican food from that point on. And so I just made it a part of my life.
Well, I love you. You nailed me. I do like fried food. My wife keeps trying to help me get out of that habit. But I like the way that you said lightly, battered, right? Lightly fried. And you've nailed me on the hot sauce. I always want the hottest sauce. So I'm glad that's one of your favorites. Now I know I got to ask for it though. Oh no, it's on the menu now. It's not a private.
It's on the menu now. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and I like that you have a private menu. We just had that last night where they did something special for us because we asked, right? But I love that. Yeah, the Gucci Kevin taco. That's pretty cool. That's good.
I like that expression.
Yeah. Hey, what any other quotes come to your mind? Because you nailed it on Viktor Frankl. What do you live by? Is there a quote or are there sayings, whether it's in customer service, which would be great, or anything? What is it that you live by? Sayings, mantras, whatever.
It varies on the day. I have a Instagram where I will put up a different expression every day relative to one of the 7 principles I talk about in communication. So every day I'll put up one I think from different people from all different walks of life. Yesterday I think was Tina Fey said something like, there are no problems, there's only solutions. There's nice. So little things like that I think are important, but I think the thing that I live by mostly is that it's up to me.
Oh, I like that.
It's up to me. We grew up always very hungry, big family, looking for food. My mom was essentially a single mom working with 7 kids. So hunger was always a big thing for me. So, and she taught me a lesson very early on. When I was 13, she said to all the boys, she said, you guys you have to go get a job. You got to bring in some money because we need some money. So I got a job as a janitor, right? Literally as a janitor, and 13 years old, friend of a friend's mom, and I'm working as a janitor, and I said, Mom, I got a job, but I'm a janitor. And she looks at me and she says, look at me, son. You be the best dang janitor you can be, because if you're really good at that, then people will move you up, because all they're looking at is seeing if you're doing what you said you were going to do and what they asked you to do. She said, number 2, you be nice to everybody, because those are the people that are going to decide to move you up. And number 3, no whining. No whining. Now, the mom of 7 kids, I'm pretty sure that's a standard mantra. Right? No whining. So no whining. Yeah, life is tough. It's tough. But you've got to just, no whining, just get it done. And, it doesn't mean it's not about fair or unfair. It's just about life. You work with what you've got, but no whining is a mantra that I keep hearing my mom in my head all the time.
I love that. I love that you followed up with also just get it done. So that's the second part of no whining. One is don't whine, but get it done. Right?
Yeah, get it done.
I love that. Hey, by the way, my wife, she just walked in while we were talking about the fried food. And look at this, no fried. I've got a salad, carrots, a little bit of tuna in there. She's trying to get me to eat healthier, and it helps me. I had my green smoothie this morning. I love Mexican food, by the way. I love it. It's awesome. It's great. We keep it going. I want to let's do a quick debrief of this episode because we covered so much. Normally, I do this off camera, but let's try something new, Kevin. Let's debrief this interaction we just had. And here's how I like to debrief. I like to first start with just a general comment. I call it a general safe on the Blue Angels. Generally, how did you feel about the interview? And then, throw in something positive. We start with the positives, and then we'll talk about, we'll both get a chance to do that. And then we'll talk about what could we have done better, and we'll be open and honest, and then we'll end with a glad to be here share out. So I'll let you go first. Generally, how did this feel? What did you learn?
I love this kind because you're a great interviewer, because you're just tuned into the moment. We're talking about the subject matter correctly, and we're not, shooting off in a bunch of different directions. And there was nothing, what would you call it? Just fake about it. There was nothing programmed about it. It's just, this is a conversation we're having about these serious subjects that can help people. And to me, that's the most important thing. I think that having seen enough relationships get destroyed because of poor communication, having seen other people's careers destroyed because of poor communication, it just became a passion of mine. I had to come up with a way to help people find a better way to communicate. I did. And I love this conversation because, I think the more people are listening to podcasts more now than they ever have, because right now everybody is doing something and listening to something else, right? And podcasts, what they've done is they've allowed people to hear a lot more from really honest, hardworking people rather than just some pundit on a cable show.
Yes. Wow. Well, I want to start first off. Thank you. And by the way, another technique is you end your comment with "glad to be here," and that does two things. It reinforces gratefulness, but also lets the other person in the conversation know that they can speak. So I'll let you finish your remarks with "glad to be here."
I can't tell you how refreshing it is to have a conversation like this. I can't tell you how glad I am to be here, because glad to be here is just a daily rewarding experience.
Wow. Thank you, Kevin. I want to start with also saying thank you. This has been so enjoyable. I really hope a lot of people can hear this. You gave so much really good information on such an important topic of communication, how to respond, not react under pressure, the tools and the traps. I can't wait to get more into that. But I also just really love the dynamic between us. There were so many places I wanted to go. And yet, you were saying things that were so important. And it's also get to know you as a person, your upbringing, where this comes from. You're a dynamic individual. I mean, it's amazing. I'm so also grateful that your book is out. I know people can go to Amazon. Where can they go? How can they interact with you if they want more information from you? Your podcast, what is it?
I have a website, bigbrainlittlebrain.com.
Yep.
You can go there, and thanks for mentioning it. I also have a couple of free downloads for your listeners. If they want an activator worksheet for their life, because they like to people identify the different things that activate you in your life. So I have a worksheet there where they can start putting those things on there, and also a neutral phrase worksheet, so they can begin to come up with their neutral phrase and see it as a tool. It's on bigbrainlittlebrain.com.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm going to go download those. I know they're going to help me. Now, the rest of the debrief. And by the way, I'm so grateful also that that we got connected. Let's do one last debrief element, and that is, what could we have done better? And even if it's just something little, how could I or you have done something better so that we make this even a better podcast in the future?
I think what I'll do is come up with. I have stories that I can tell, and sometimes the stories can be verbose. So sometimes it may be better to consolidate those stories into shorter ideas of the story rather than the entire story. So that's what I'm thinking about. Is there, when you asked a question about examples, I could probably offer multiple more examples, maybe instead of or in place of the stories, depending upon what the interviewer wants to do.
That's a great idea. I felt a little bit of that on some of it, but I also want to say from my side, I might have talked a little too much. There were so many, you spurred so many ideas in my brain about my history. I wanted to share that, but this is really about you. But I thought together we did a really good thing. So I don't know, maybe I shared a little too much, but
no, I think the thing about a conversation is there's especially when there's no necessarily time limit on it.
Yeah.
I love a conversation like this. One of my favorite things to do is to do walking conversations, right? Because that way you're on a walk, and so you can keep going because you can keep the conversation going. We'll know exactly when to let it end, stuff like that. A basic idea, so your listeners have a sense. And there's always editing if I'm too verbose or something. But I think it becomes down to letting the conversation flow. The more people are comfortable with doing that, I think the better the world will be. And the idea that you can simply continue the conversation if you're going somewhere.
I love that. Well, thank you for that debrief. This is a first, by the way, audience, where we did the debrief at the end of the podcast. I like this because I think that we all can learn from these kind of conversations. And I think I'm going to start doing this more. So everybody stand by. You're going to get more debriefs at the end of our podcast. Normally I had done those after we sign off. Kevin, let's leave each other with a heartfelt, because I know you speak from the heart, not just the head. And we were going to talk more about that, but we'll just do it right here. A heartfelt, what does glad to be here mean to you right now?
I've been in the restaurant business for 37 years. I am glad to be here because we're still in business, and we're still, all my employees are still working. My wife and I have been together 35 years.
Wow.
I have two wonderful daughters. And no matter how tough this next year and a half is going to be, it just doesn't matter because I'm glad to be here.
Wow. Thank you, Kevin. That's powerful. I can feel it. The challenges and the expertise. I'm going to start with glad to be here. Thank you for being on this podcast today. I'm so grateful that we got connected, because thank you for your wisdom, your compassion, by the way, and thank you for not just being satisfied with being a restaurant owner, entrepreneur, but sharing that customer experience that we all can benefit from, your wisdom. So I know I personally gained a lot today. And I think the world is going to gain a lot from not only from your book, but your wisdom. So thank you for being here. Glad to be here.
I'm grateful. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.